Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords, and by now, you will have already heard, sadly, that Venger Satanis has decided to quit the professional side of the hobby. This is the reason, as you might have seen a couple of days ago, that we said inappropriate character. Oh, I know, Meatball is troubled by this. That we had said a couple of days ago that the Sunday episode of Inappropriate Characters is going to be the last episode of Inappropriate Characters, and it's because now I can say it's because of that. It's because Venger is leaving, and I think that it's worthy of doing a bit of an analysis of what I think went wrong, because here's the thing: the first. Venger Satanis, when he talks about it, he says that he was, before the pandemic, he was making about $1,000 a month off of gaming, which is quite good, actually. It's pretty good. I was probably, if we're talking about before the pandemic, I was probably only making around that, a little more at that time, you know. But then he started to have a decline, and now he said in his, and this is all in his blog, right? So I'm not revealing any confidential information. He said that his income has gone down to very, very low, to about like $200 a month, right? And that's wild, you know. Like, I was thinking just the other day. So, you know how YouTube gives you, you know, it monetizes you after you have a certain number of views or of subscribers, and you know, you pick the ads and whatever. Well, you don't pick them. You decide which videos you want to risk trying to monetize, and you try to make sure that it doesn't break any rules and all of that. And then at the end, every month they give you some money, you know. And I hadn't really even been checking very well what that money was recently, but so, you know, I'm making before tax usually somewhere a bit over $200 a month, just like from the channel, right? And that to me is like, I don't even pay very particular attention to it. Let's put it that way, right? Because in those years, since there was one point where Venger and I were basically very, very close in terms of those things, and then suddenly it became a tale of two cities as he started to decline, and I ended up moving up in terms of my successes, and my, you know, his income fell to like 1/5 of what it was, and mine has somewhere between, it's been like more tripled or quadrupled when it comes to RPG income, right? And I mean, obviously he has his own income from his other job too, right? But so what happened? Was it that the OSR is dying? Well, I would say the answer to that is no, because as I pointed out in a video not very long ago, the OSR has actually been increasing in profitability and success over the course of the last 5 years. That's pretty much from the time that Venger cited at the like pre-pandemic era until today. And so there's a lot of people who are doing okay with that. Now, is it the economy? That's certainly possible. I mean, I have to say, for example, for me this year, I've had my best year, actually, because Baptism of Fire came out. But it's also been a much more fluctuating year. This is the thing I've noticed, is that month to month, the royalties are coming in very weird oscillations, like compared to previous years, where previous years they were much closer to each other month to month, right? Like sometimes, you know, there's always 1 or 2 months where things like after Christmas, the sales get slow, or whatever, right? But in this case, it's like it's become more unpredictable. This year, it's become very unpredictable when I'm going to make a lot of money or less money, and it's turned out to be. Well, the year isn't over yet, but I think that when we add it all up, it'll probably be my best year because, again, of baptism of fire that Meatball is sitting on. Okay, possibly yes, because of Meatball also, right, Meatball? Yeah, and we've had a very good year for that, right? Now, obviously, there is an economic problem, and so there are some people that were maybe buying a lot of RPG books that aren't now, you know. And yet, there's still a lot of people buying RPG books. So I'm not sure that does it either, you know. And the other thing that Venger talked about was what he called the shadow darking of the OSR, where he suggests that now that you have these people who've moved in that are basically tourists and that are doing these slick gaming production. I think I'm not quoting exactly because I'm doing this from memory, but I'm kind of paraphrasing what he was saying. They're doing slick crowdfunding productions that have to involve all these YouTube influencers that weren't around 2 days ago, but that now are super important to endorse your product so that people will buy it just stupidly. And you know, none of what Venger says there is wrong, right? Like those types of products have been doing some 7-figure Kickstarters, right? That is true. But again, most of the people that bought Shadow Dark, like I don't think, for example, that Shadow Dark has affected my sales at all, right? That the fact that Shadow Dark did well doesn't mean that Baptism of Fire did poorly, right? It didn't. It's done really well. It spent 8.5 weeks in the number 1 position for OSR games. It was number 1 in overall game sales in drive-thru for some time, and you know, it hit gold faster than any RPG I had made beforehand. Okay, and it's sold really, really well. You know, so like, why is it that doesn't work with Venger? I mean, maybe the point is he does Kickstarter funding. I've never done a Kickstarter, but you know, it's still, I still don't think it works that way, right? Like, I think that he might have gotten some casual people, 1 or 2, that would have come in browsing through Kickstarter, that might have chosen him, but then ended up choosing Shadow Dark or something like that. But that's not a significant difference. So that doesn't leave you with a lot of things, except that I think that Venger found a niche, right? And that niche was a very good niche for a while. It was like, you know, probably started with Purple Haunted Putrescence and Crimson Dragon Slayer, went on to Alpha Blue, and then to Chalt. And when he got to Chalt and kicked into like OSR high gear, that was a big deal, right? He had gotten in there in a way that was successful for him, and he has a fan base, right? But you have to consider the nature of that niche. And I'm going to talk about that in the context of my thing, right? And I've got here the Invisible College, right? So the Invisible College was a labor of love, right? I wanted to create an occult modern RPG that was based on authentic occultism of the modern era, just like, you know, Baptism of Fire is based on like authentic myth and magic of the Middle Ages. So this was a passion project of mine. It was the book I most was curious to make, right? Is to do something that was in the style of a bit of Call of Cthulhu, a bit of Mage the Ascension, or whatever, but was actually much more serious than those in terms of its authenticity. It wasn't just some made up system of magic. It was the game where you could play characters who are members of the Order of the Golden Dawn and do the magic of the Order of the Golden Dawn. And I had no idea how it was going to sell. I wasn't sure if it could have been a runaway hit, right? And worked on it quite well. There were a few problems with the particular, some of the decisions that the publisher made in terms of the color patterns and things like that. Some people didn't like, but those were minor things. I don't think that they ultimately affected too much the value of the book, like the success of the book. And so here's the thing. Invisible College was a pretty mild success, right? Like it did hit some bestseller tiers. I don't remember which it is right now. I don't think is it gold? No, I don't think it's gold yet. Even I think it's Electrum. And it's been around for years now, right? So it's okay. Nobody lost their pants about it, but we also didn't make a fortune, right? We didn't. It's not baptism of fire money. I'll tell you that, right? And I realized that, and I realized that. Nevertheless, the Invisible College has some really huge fans, right? There are people that really, really enjoy it, right? And that would probably, if I made Invisible College products, would probably buy a bunch of Invisible College products. But I doing that didn't mean that I was going to not do stuff that is medieval authentic or stuff that is Gonzo. I think one of the differences, where I'm getting to in all of this, is I think one of the differences that happened between me and Venger is because I don't think I'm a better writer than he is or something. I certainly don't think that I'm a better book producer than he is. I do have some excellent publishers. I managed to team up with excellent publishers. And remember, by the way, that's another thing, right? Venger publishes himself. I'm getting published by somebody, by a publisher, which means that the money that we were relatively making, there's also a cut that the publisher takes, right, from that. But anyway, the point was, I have intentionally tried to maintain some diversification, right? So I have the medieval authentic stuff. I have the Gonzo stuff, which I didn't happen to bring here. I have some of like the side stuff like Invisible College or Star Adventurer. And in doing this, it does two things. The first is that it doesn't limit me to one hook, right? To being the guy that does just this, right? Like I could have become, he's the medieval authentic guy. Everything he does is medieval authentic, right? And, the medieval authentic stuff is the stuff that sells best that I make. And I think, in that case it is because I've got a very particular expertise. But I think if I did that, there would be the chance of me painting myself into a corner, right? There are times where one gets caught up in a certain type of, idea, and you start with like stuff that is more accessible to people. It's like, like there's some comic book, right? And issue 1 of the comic, you read it and it's cool, right? And you like it. But by the time it gets to issue 369 or something like that, nobody who wasn't there at the start will know what the hell is going on, and so the buy-in is too big, right? So like that is what I'm kind of talking about here, is that you start getting into progressively more marginal stuff as you go along if you're producing everything in one single genre. So with Venger, I think he had to develop himself into increasingly weird areas, to the point that he sometimes got in trouble with drive-through and stuff like that, So that's I think one of the differences is that I have not been like, he is the Chalt guy, right? You want to call it Chalt or whatever else you want to call it, his particular type of weird Gonzo. And he's the guy. He's the only guy that does it. He's the best guy that does it by definition, right? But there, after time, that can end up getting you kind of stuck. And so I think that the main difference at the end, and like, I'm fine. I'm doing very well. So you don't expect me to retire anytime soon, God willing, if my health is all right. But that's I think it's not necessarily because I'm a better businessman than Venger. I certainly don't think I am. And it's not because I'm a necessarily vastly more capable as a game designer than Venger. Though I think I do probably sometimes think about the mechanics of game design a little more, but I don't think that makes a big difference in terms of whether people are going to buy my products or not. I think it's just that I have tried to keep myself going in ample different directions, and not just kind of going more. I've spread out rather than going deeper and deeper into one particular spot, and I think that might have been the difference. Now, what can Venger do? I don't know. I think for one thing, he kind of is the Chult guy now, and so I think he's got a couple of options, right? I think on the first place, he's burnt out. Things aren't working for him. The best thing to do is in that sort of situation might be to take a hiatus from producing stuff, not from gaming, but from producing, right? And then he can go on to eventually either do one of two things. The Chult come back, right? In 7 years or whatever. Or he could do a start where he starts making stuff that he wants to make very slowly, not putting any pressure on it to be like big business or something like that. And maybe starting in different creative areas, right? Like if there's some other kind of style or genre that he didn't have the chance the first time around to look at, and I know that I've got styles and genres that I'm still thinking of looking at. I want to make a setting for Star Adventure that'll be a challenge for me because it's sci-fi. It's not medieval authentic or stuff like that. I want to maybe someday try to do a cyberpunk game, though that'll probably get me banned. But those are things to think about, right? And I think that in fact, now this is my full-time job, right? This is what I'm making everything from. So I do have to think a little bit about is it worth me investing 6 to 8 months of my life or a year by the time it gets published on a specific thing? Will it be worth the time, right? But on the other hand, I also can say, well, I can write what I like because I've had all these previous successes and because there's the long tail and my books keep selling, and I can afford to have a game like Invisible College. It doesn't sell quite as well as some of my other products like the Old School Companion 2 or Baptism of Fire. So I think Venger could eventually come back to do something different, maybe try a different genre and see how it goes for him. So before we finish off here, Baptism of Fire. I was going to try to go into the next section of the discussion of the the design notes, but I had someone ask me for something specific here, and I guess I will try to. Where is this? Oh, I think I passed it. I think I haven't passed it yet. There you go. There's somebody who asked me exactly how combat works. Excuse me. In Baptism of Fire. So, let me see here. These are reaction rolls. As you see, it's been expanded significantly. Morale rules. Morale rules work very similar to Basic Expert. So, stuff on travel time, survival. Right, so a DM can determine initial random encounter distance. There's a possibility of surprise attacks that could happen also when you're in a wilderness area or things like that. Assuming those don't happen, the first thing that you do is you roll initiative. And so in my games, every character rolls a d6 initiative, modified by dex and armor modifiers if applicable. Some classes get bonuses to initiative. And that is set up as the basic initiative for the entire combat, but round by round, the value might be modified by their actions, because if PCs tie on initiative, the one with the highest dex goes first. Characters who plan to do nothing on a particular round will get a +2 to their initiative for the next round. Characters who take no action at all... characters who take no action at all get a +2. Characters who plan to do nothing but move can announce so beforehand, and then they get a +2 to initiative on that round. Weapon modifiers to initiative apply to any character attempting a melee attack. Certain actions like reloading weapons or performing skills can take 1 round or longer to complete. And in this case, the character in question begins their action on their initiative, and the action is not finished until the initiative count is registered. Hey, Meatball, come on. Sorry, Meatball. Here, sit here. Sit here. It's a little one. So in actions, you can do movement, which lets you move up to a full movement rate of 90 feet if you're taking no other action. That's basically your character's running. If you're wearing armor or have sustained injuries or have encumbrance, you might be reduced in movement. Combat characters can use their base movement up to 30 feet and do a melee ranged attack. They can also do a charging attack of up to double their movement, usually 60 feet. Multiple attacks, characters with multiple attacks attack can use multiple attacks if they are doing only combat, only attacks, no movement beyond a 5-foot step. And their each attack happens 1 point lower on the initiative skill. So if they roll a 5 on initiative, when it's a 5, they attack the first time. On the 4, they'll attack the second. On the 3rd, they'll attack the 3rd, etc. Using magic, any character can use a magic or miraculous power that can be used in a combat round, but they can't move more than 5 feet in the same round. Some powers require concentration to maintain, in which case they can walk their base movement each round while concentrating, but can take no other action. Concentration is broken also. It says in the magic section if you are attacked or heavily distracted, injured in any way, or things like that, Changing weapons. You can change a weapon in your hand and draw a new weapon. That's a full action. You can also move 30 feet while you do that. Or you can drop what's in your hand, draw a new weapon, and attack. And if you do that, you can't move more than 5 feet, and your attack has a -2 penalty. Other actions, well, there's other stuff you can choose to do. Free attacks, there are certain things that allow characters to make a free attack. A free attack mostly happens when characters are trying to move past them or move away from them without careful withdrawal. And those attacks happen separately to anything in the initiative. Attacks. For melee attacks, you roll a d20 plus strength bonus plus attack bonus by level, weapon, and modifiers. Range attacks is d20 plus dex. You can add various miscellaneous modifiers. Meatball. Okay, Meatball. Tell you what. You sit on the invisible college, huh? Come on. Meatball. No. Come on, cat. Jesus, these things are always a disaster. All right, critical hits. So if you got a natural 1, nothing happens except that you definitely miss, no matter what, right? A natural 20 always hits. And additionally, a natural 20 is almost always a critical. And what you do is you roll on the critical table a d20 plus your charisma modifier, because that determines whether God likes you or not. And then you add your level if you're a warrior class, right? So warrior classes are like fighters, holy warriors, and what are they called? Witch hunters. So the higher the result, the more the damage. There's tables for slashing, piercing, blunt weapons, arrows, sling stones, and animal attacks. Some special things do certain special damage. Charging, if your character charges on foot, they get a +1 to hit, but a -2 to armor class. If the target of a charge armed with the spear of polearm, they can get a free attack against the charger and do double damage if they hit, but this only applies if they are the target of the charge. Parrying. This is one of the other areas where things get quite different. So characters can engage in a kind of a partial defense where they have a -4 penalty to attack rolls, but they can attempt to block with their shield or weapon an attack from an opponent. So if their character is attacked and hit successfully in melee, they may do a parrying roll of a d20 plus their attack bonus. If they're using a shield, it's basic attack bonus +2. If in total defense, it's +4. That is to say, if you weren't fighting at the same time. To successfully parry, you must surpass the value of the attack roll. If the character successfully parries, they do a blocking roll. It's a d4 if it's with a weapon, a d8 if it's with a shield. This is modified by the defender's strength bonus. A shield has a magical bonus that's also added, and fighters and holy warriors add a bonus equal to their level. The attacker rolls his damage normally. If the attacker roll surpasses the value of the blocking, the attacker does full damage. If the blocking roll is higher than the attacker's damage roll, then the damage was absorbed by the parry. Characters doing partial defense can only do one parrying roll per round. Except for fighters who can parry a number of rounds equal to their level, but have a cumulative -2 parrying penalty every time for each subsequent attack, right? And no one can parry a ranged attack except for fighters with shields who can attempt to do so at a -8 penalty. Firing into melee, you have a risk of hitting one of your own pals unless you take a -4. Aimed shots, you spend a round aiming with a ranged weapon, you get a +4. This is all very basic stuff. Mounted combat, characters get a +1 against non-mounted people. A lot of these rules, as you'll see, I mean, some of them, like the parrying rules, I created. But a lot of these are stuff that you find in either old school products, like genuine old school products, or OSR books of other kinds, right? I have definitely not invented most of these. I've sometimes modified them. So if you charge with a horse, you get a +2 to hit, and if you hit, you do double damage, if you're using the right kinds of weapons. Visibility and cover rules, prone and helpless opponents. Anyways, I think that we've gotten like to basically the gist of answering the question that the guy might have asked, is like, what are the basic mechanics of the combat? Grappling is an opposed check, and when you grapple, you can have various different results, which could include wrestling, tripping, disarming. The wrestling has specific things you could afterwards do, which is either to like strike your opponent, pin your opponent, strangle your opponent, etc. And so yeah, that's about it. I don't remember if the last video I already talked about injury or not, but characters, if they hit 0, they're unconscious. If they get into negatives, they're very seriously injured and will require certain types of checks that will allow them to potentially survive. If you're at -1 or 2, you're not too terribly bad. -3 or 4, you now require a much higher check to be stabilized. If you don't get stabilized, you're losing more hit points. If you get to -5, you can only be saved by magic, and will die after 1d10 rounds from hitting -5. So it's a slippery slope if you don't get treated relatively quickly. Saving throws are a single number, but you roll with modifiers of different kinds, attribute modifiers, depending on the type of save. And you might have bonuses by the type of attack. So like if it's reflex, or if it's magic, or if it's poison, There's diseases. Okay, so now we're well out past the combat area. But disease is a very significant thing in my game, right? Like it is, disease is a big risk. And yeah, I know I talked about experience, so I think we will stop there for today. Next time we will get into treasure and valuables, I guess, or the next time that I do more of design notes. That is about perfect. So anyways, if you like this video, please share it. Please post it anywhere you think people find it interesting, or where you think people get pissed off about it. I hope it doesn't piss off Venger anyway, but I don't think that there's... I was trying to think a lot about why it was that he didn't manage to do well from the last several years, that he's been in decline and I've been in ascendance, and I just found it curious. But if you like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Hit the like button in the video. If you want to support me, I mean, you can give super thanks or super chats or things like that, which, as I said, gives me some money from YouTube. But the best way to support me and actually to benefit yourself is to check out my products, stuff like Baptism of Fire, my bestseller game, the Old School Companion 2, which has 26 different types of mostly sandbox-style old school adventures, or the Invisible College, the Occult modern magical secret agent RPG that that involves secret societies in a war in our real modern day world, in a war for the destiny of humankind, a magical war, an occult war, or any of my other products, including the Pundit Files. The Pundit Files come out in the Red Room store every 2 weeks, and we have a new one now, which is, well, it came out this week, which is the space opera world generator, and that is the first glimpse of that science fiction setting that I was telling you about, the Sons of Heaven. You can get it now. It's got, it'll give you details about the setting, and then it has a way for you to generate adventures in that setting using Star Adventure or any other sci-fi OSR game. So it's a pretty neat little product. It's not big, but it's a good introduction, and you can get it at the Red Room store for $3.50. Okay, you just got to get someone to give you $3.50, and you can get the latest issue of the Pundit Files or any of the other issues of the Pundit Files at the Red Room store. The links are all in the description below. And be sure to check out this Sunday on Rumble and X the final episode of Inappropriate Characters. The end, the last one. And probably there will be big announcements of big things as well. So we'll talk to you soon after that. Currently smoking nothing because I only just barely got up. So I will get back to you on that later.